This week on Inevitable,
We smoke a cigar in space.
we rig a pool table in our favor.
And we legally change our name for the sake of journalism.
Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast where we're just pawns in everybody else's game. Because this week we watched Trivial Games and Paranoid Pursuits.
Written by Chris Boucher.
Directed by Graham Harper.
And it aired on July 27th, 1987.
A fitting intro because the Trivial Pursuit bookends the title of this episode. The Star Cops episode. Because it's Trivial Games and Paranoid Pursuits. So Trivial Pursuit, that's a game. The intro was we were just pawns in everybody else's game.
Yeah. Also, this podcast is a pretty trivial pursuit. You know?
Wow. So self-deprecating. So sad.
Well, we do provide a lot of trivia, I would say. Or we have been so far.
Trying to?
Yeah. Which, speaking of trivia, I didn't find any making of stuff for this episode.
No.
This is the first episode that Graham Harper directed. Well, in watch order. I don't know. Maybe the production order, this wasn't his first one. I'm not sure. I think a week or two ago, I made the comment that like half the season's directed by Graham Harper and the other half is directed by Christopher Baker. Mm-hmm. And that's split. I think I said that was split evenly like down the middle of the show, and that's actually not true. So we have Graham Harper on this one. I think Christopher Baker comes back at some point for like one or two more episodes, and then it switches back to Graham Harper again. So it's not an even break there, but it is like half and half.
I'm not surprised to hear that Graham Harper directed this one. I mean, I didn't watch the episode and go like, this is obviously a different director, but like it just felt different. So hearing that it was a different director, I know because I know a lot of people were like, it's noticeable that the director changed, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but I wasn't like, watching the episode, I wasn't like, oh yeah, this is obviously a different director, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, I don't think I would have known. I mean, it's still Chris Boucher writing the episode. Mm-hmm. And this definitely has like a lot of Chris Boucher-y like back and forth dialogue. In fact, most of this episode is kind of just characters talking to one another, which is interesting, kind of, most of the time, I guess. But I would say that I think of the four of Star Cops episodes that I've watched, this is my probably the least favorite.
Probably mine too. Probably because I feel like it's actually pretty dull.
Yeah,
comparatively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike it. I just think the other three, like the thrust and like the entire crux of like the crime in the other three was more interesting than the one that we saw in this one.
Yeah, I guess that's the detriment to doing like a police procedural is that the quality of your episode is going to be highly dependent on how interesting your crime is, right?
Yeah.
And I think this week for me, I don't even know if there was that much of a crime like in the previous senses. Like no one killed anyone. The crime really was the Ronald Reagan covering up an accident on their ship, but that's like a very white collar crime. So.
Yeah. And they definitely injected some more mystery into it with like the Dilly Goodman and stuff, and like, oh, she doesn't actually exist either. He never had a sister type thing. But even then, like, yeah, I just felt it wasn't as interesting. And I actually feel like the character of Commander Griffin is kind of wasted in this because I think he's played like really well. Like that could be a really sinister character, I think, if the crime was like a lot more sinister.
Yeah, well, at the end of the episode, he's just BFFs with Nathan and Kenzie, so...
Well, I mean, he's presumably gets arrested.
I mean, the Star Cops don't arrest him because, like, I guess they can't find any evidence again because I guess the Star Cops are just hopeless at their job, but they, like, leak the whole thing to Dilly Goodman, so presumably she's going to publish an expose on it, and then the government will, like, arrest him or something.
But I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but if you think about it, the Star Cops, like, got what they wanted out of this. They, didn't really have to do anything. They didn't really interfere with with the operations here. Other than, the press and I guess the Earth cops are going to take care of this. Also, they got the Americans to agree to having Star Cops on their bases. And considering the bureaucracy needed to overturn like the most minute decision, seems to be in place. Like, that's going to stand. Like, so what if Griffin was arrested? Like, it's going to stand.
I guess. It's weird that Nathan Spring's looking to move the Star Cops already again. I guess Moonbase is... Anyway, the episode starts with, as usual, the B plot that ties into the A plot.
Right.
With the Salvage Crew basically finding something weird floating in space. And they're like, it's kind of weird, but we shouldn't be salvaging here. Like, it's illegal, but we're doing it anyway.
Yeah, so this is... I wrote down their names, Marty and Louder. And, they find some debris, and they're like, sweet, we hit the mother lode. Let's do this. And then we sort of just cut away from them for a while. Yeah. I think one of the also biggest weaknesses of this episode, or something that I just found like totally dull about it, was that we keep cutting back to Marty and Louder salvaging this thing, but there's no progress made in their plot. It's just them salvaging, just like, we're still here salvaging this, like it's going well.
Salvage Crew in existence.
In their defense, it's a two-man team, so...
Yeah, in the defense, it's like welded shut, too.
So on Star Cops, or actually no, not on Star Cops, base on Earth, we see like a neighborhood with kids, happily playing, and then we go into a house. Weirdly enough, when we see this house later, it looks like it's in the middle of the woods. Did you notice that? Of like this establishing thing of like, hey, this is in like a community, it's in a neighborhood, and here we are. when Theroux goes later, he's like walking.
Yeah, it's like.
But a woman named Dilly Goodman is in this house, and she's making a call to a space station called the Ronald Reagan. And she's concerned because her brother has sort of just disappeared from this station, and there's not a single trace that he was ever there or ever even alive on Earth at all. And she's like, hey, what's that all about? But she runs into like a teleprompter nightmare loop thing of like, you can't actually talk to somebody. And when she finally does get somebody on the line, he's just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, bye.
Yeah, when she calls the Ronald Reagan, there's this like really irritating 30-second intro where it plays like the song that was made really famous by 2001: A Space Odyssey. They're like dun dun, dun. Like it plays that whole song, and then it comes up with a logo like Ronald Reagan, and then it connects you to a robot. And I'm like, damn, do you have to watch that intro every time you call the Ronald Reagan? That sucks.
Probably just installed that because they're doing some sketch stuff on the Ronald Reagan and they just don't want people calling them. Which I guess, I can't believe I didn't realize this until now, but I guess it's like called the Ronald Reagan because of like all the sketch stuff they're doing. I can't believe I literally didn't think of that until now.
I mean, wasn't Ronald Reagan like president when this, or shortly before this went out?
Yeah, I mean, he was president in the mid-'80s, and even at that time it was known that he was like...
Good old Iran-Contra affair.
Well, also like the trickle-down effect and all that stuff.
Reaganomics. Reaganomics.
But yeah, she's totally just brushed off by the people on this station. But this isn't the last we've heard from Dilly Goodman.
Sadly.
This probably is one of the first things we've heard from Dilly Goodman, since we find out later that she never even existed until now. But hey.
So Kenzie is upset that she's not getting good treatment. She says she might have to throw another press conference to get better treatment. And David's like, yeah, I mean, you could do that. It won't do anything because we'll just tell them that you basically were a scam artist who scammed their way into the Star Cops. And then she's like, okay. And she calls up Nathan's like, I'm going to quit. And he's like, all right, put it in triplicate and put it on my desk. Goodbye. And he hangs up. And she's like, whoa. She calls him back. She's like, I'm going to quit if you don't give me a better job to do. And he's just like, all right, get it in triplicate, put it on my desk.
Yeah, Nathan and Theroux are really not happy that Kenzie is back working for them.
Understandably, she was on the take, and then she just weaseled her way back into the job.
Yeah, Divas, on the other hand, doesn't really seem to care. I can see the change in Divas' personality, because in this episode, it really seems as if Divas just doesn't give a shit about anything that's going on.
He's a bit more aloof than he was before, shall we say. Anyway, David says, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn to Kenzie as he leaves when she's complaining. And I'm surprised that the Anorak Zone didn't catch this very obvious reference to Gone with the Wind, but...
I didn't catch it either. If it makes you feel any better, Anorak Zone, I know you're listening.
The website, the Anorak Zone website, you are listening right now.
Intelligent listening for beginners.
Great.
So Theroux is also going somewhere on Earth. He's going to some conference or something along those lines.
Some Star Cops conference.
But his plans get changed shortly. And Star Cops is also just still operating out of like this closet on the moon base.
Yeah, the storage closet.
But if the end of this episode is any indication, hopefully they'll have a better base soon.
Yeah, they've changed base like twice already.
Did you notice when we cut to Nathan in the shuttle or wherever he is, there's like an unknown Star Cop sitting next to him?
Yeah, like piloting him. Was it a Star Cop or was it just a pilot? Because I noticed later on that like Commander Griffin's outfit was the exact same color as the Star Cop's uniform, and I'm like, that's not confusing. Well, is that a Star Cop or is that a pilot? Because at the end of the episode, I noticed that Commander Griffin's like uniform is like a very similar color to the Star Cops, and I was like, that's not confusing.
It's a different design. Yeah, it's very similar though.
Maybe there's just extra Star Cops we don't know about. Commander Griffin is really upset that Hubble was fired, and we find out later that Hubble was taking bribes from Commander Griffin.
Yeah, so I didn't really even put this all together, but I guess in the last episode we didn't ever find out like what Hubble was doing.
I mean, we knew he was taking bribes, or at least Nathan suspected he was also taking bribes, like Kenzie.
Yeah, we just didn't get like the whole story, and I guess I never expected that we would like get the follow-up for that now.
The next week.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think Hubble was coming back. I thought he was just like extra flavor to like Kenzie is corrupt not subplot, but like thing. But I guess not. I guess he was just extra flavor for this thing that's going on here.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, we find out later that Hubble was taking bribes from Commander Griffin,
right?
Like, to I guess just ignore all the things they're covering up.
And it seems as if, I don't know if you caught this scene later on, but it seems as if Nathan is pretty willing to take bribes as well. Unless he was just bluffing because he knew Kenzie was recording, but like, I don't know.
I think he was just bluffing.
I don't know.
Or he just doesn't care about his job anymore already. 4 episodes in, he's like, get me out of here. Already got my girlfriend killed.
Anyway, he's going to the Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And, he shows up there, and the corridors in the Ronald Reagan look very easy to get lost in. I think someone actually mentions that later, like, yeah, we get lost here, like, frequently or something like that.
Nathan says something like, it's tough sleeping in 0G again after having gravity. And I'm like, the gravity on the moon is, like, tiny.
Yeah, so this is when we actually meet Commander Griffin formally.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think this could be a really sinister character if the cover-up was, like, more sinister. Which, not that it's not sinister. I mean, the guy was developing, like, bacteria that
could survive in the vacuum of space, basically.
But, like, I like how this guy's played. He's sort of, all smiles, but, like, it's a sinister smile.
He tries to turn Nathan on David and reveals something else about David's history. We didn't know that David was a student radical when he was in college.
Yeah, because, they bring up the fact that Hubble was fired, and, like, a lot of Americans don't like Nathan because of that. And Nathan's like, well, we still, I think Nathan says, like, we still have an American on the Star Cops, and this is when we find out that Theroux was a radical, a hippie, I guess, sort of, part of the... I don't know. We don't really get any more information other than that he was a student radical, but... It's
also, like, very biased information, because Commander Griffin, like, very obviously doesn't like David because he doesn't comply with, like...
Yeah.
There's this theme that they want, like, an American plant inside of Star Cops, and David doesn't, like, swear allegiance to the American government, basically.
Yeah, David actually seems like the least... After this episode, I would even put him above Nathan in this. He seems like the least corrupt out of all of them.
So Dilly Goodman calls Kenzie, and it's like, my brother's missing. And Kenzie's like, how old is he?
What do you want me to do about it, basically?
Yeah, basically, like, how old is he? You think he ran off to space, didn't you? Tisk, tisk, tisk. And she's like, he's 45. And Kenzie's like, oh. And David's just sitting over in the corner like,
Yeah, I really enjoyed like the pleasure that David took in this episode from Kenzie being roped into all of this. But yeah, since the last place that what was his name, Harvey Goodman?
Yeah, Harvey Goodman.
Was known to be was the Ronald Reagan. Kenzie's like, all right, no, I'll go investigate type thing.
Right. So she decides to truck her ship over to the Ronald Reagan, I guess. David calls up Nathan. He's like, Kenzie's on her way. And Nathan's like, please no. And David's like, you don't have a choice. She's like halfway there already.
Well, we forgot to mention that Nathan actually rigged the pool table using box to beat Griffin.
Well, that's because Griffin's rigged the pool table in his favor, so
Yeah.
Nathan just re-rigs it in his favor instead.
I guess we're learning more about Box slowly. So Box has the power to just like overwrite whatever electromagnetic signals or whatever Griffin was using to rig the pool table.
I'm just impressed he found a way to rig a pool table.
We get the line like pool, America's game or something like that. I was
that's
like,
not
really?
true. Yeah.
Like the American pastime, not baseball, pool.
Not football, pool. Commander Griffin's decked out in like a full baseball outfit for like a lot of the story too.
I think, isn't it football? Because he has all the football like pennants on the wall.
I didn't know. To be honest, I didn't know.
I believe it's football. Because the pennants on the wall are definitely football. It's
Maybe-
2027. I don't think football is going anywhere.
Well, we know the Wolverines still existed. That was basketball, right? I think.
True, yeah. Maybe he's just wearing like a legacy team like jersey. Maybe they're long gone.
Maybe he's like back in the good old days. Yeah, maybe pool is like now America's game because like maybe the air is so toxic they can't go outside to play baseball or football, so they just go to pool halls and play pool.
Seedy pool halls. Well, here, like we have, I guess we kind of just assumed that Star Cops was in a dystopian future because, I mean, we see that
looks
neighborhood.
pretty bleak.
Well, like, I mean, theoretically, like everyone's corrupt and like the future is bleak and like they're about to go into nuclear war and stuff. But like, you look at that community that they're running through and like the kids look pretty happy. Like, I don't know.
The kids are the only people who's like smile on this show, except for Commander Griffin, and he's just like making bank off these experiments they're covering up on the Ronald Reagan. It's kind of weird that they didn't. Is the Ronald Reagan the space station from 2 episodes ago that the radical who killed Lee Jones was trying to get onto? The British one?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember if that station had a name.
If it didn't have a name, or if it was named something different, I was going to say it's kind of weird that they would like introduce another American space station when they have that one just primed and ready for plot development.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, on Moonbase, what's his name? Kravenko shows up.
Yeah, so this
Alexander Kravenko, I think is his
Alexander
name.
Kravenko. And according to the Anorak Zone site, this is perhaps the worst like accent on Star Cops.
Yeah, the Anorak site says like this episode has the worst like stereotypical portrayals of cultures on this show.
Yeah, so Alexander Kravenko is the replacement for
Stevenson, right?
no, wasn't his name like Patton or something like that? The French guy who was in charge of Moonbase from 2 episodes ago.
Oh.
Yeah, Stevenson was the corrupt guy, the corrupt
Yeah,
traffic
that's
controller.
what I thought when they were talking about him being a replacement. I thought it was a replacement for Stevenson.
Yeah, that's why like later on, Griffin is like really grilling Nathan because he's like, you like to get nationals fired and replaced with Russians, don't you? Even though he knows like what Hubble was doing in hindsight. But anyway, yeah, Kravenko is like now in charge of Moonbase, and he sort of walks in the office and Divas reminds him like, hey, Star Cops are in charge of this closet. Like, you have no right to like be here.
Star Cops are in charge of this closet. This is the Star Cops closet.
I mean, that's what it seems like, because based on this dialogue, it seems as if Kravenko is in charge of like every other part of the base except this like small room that they operate out of.
He's a molecular, but he's a Nobel Prize winning biologist. I think Nathan says later on.
Yeah.
But the Nobel Prize still exists in 2027, so that's good.
This isn't that far out. I mean,
Hey
like, I would
man,
be-
hey man, a lot can happen in the next 8 years. That's like 2 whole president terms.
Well, according to Star Cops, the Soviet Union's coming back, so...
I can't wait for that to happen. Not.
So, meanwhile, Nathan is supposed to be taking a tour with Griffin.
Yeah,
Mackenzie shows up.
And it's like, Harvey Goodman's missing. And there's no records of Harvey Goodman. And Nathan's like, you're not an idiot, Kenzie. Like, in all of the... What university did he go to? Like, Stanford or something? It's like in the past, like, 20
like
years.
MIT and Caltech or something like that.
Yeah, that was it. MIT and Caltech. At least one Goodman had to have gone there, right? But there's literally no Goodmans. That's suspicious, Kenzie, you dense block of lead. And he says that that's what someone would do if they wanted to just do a quick cover-up to remove Harvey Goodman, would be to remove all Goodmans from the system and hope no one noticed.
Right. But they don't really know where to, like, go with that information. They know something is up because the OMZ, I think it was called, or OZM 13. Hold on, I wrote it down. OMZ 13, which is like not a medical bay, but it's like a part of the station that's supposedly never existed. Mm-hmm. Like they know that was, you know, or they have like suspicion that that's part of the cover up because of the information.
Well, they decide to break into to the archives, I think.
Well, there's this weirdly like humorous. There's actually a couple like weirdly humorous moments of like they go to like Griffin and confront him about this, but then like similar to Davis in last episode, like he just weirdly and like really uncomfortably starts hitting on Kenzie. And I was like, Jesus, is Kenzie like the only woman in space? Like, what is?
Maybe.
Well, like I said, like there's definitely like we see at least one.
Well, one of the salvage people is a woman.
And there's women working on the Ronald Reagan we see in the background.
One
but,
of
like,
the women
it just seems like everyone's just hitting on Kenzie like in a really uncomfortable manner to watch. Uncomfortable to watch, man.
It's very sexualized, which is why it's uncomfortable. Like Griffin's making oblique references to his pool stick, and you're like, And then he's like, "Let me go show you the real pool stick," and Kenzie's like, "Great, thanks."
Yeah, but that's how, like, I mean, I guess in retrospect, that's all part of, like, Griffin's ploy, right? He was trying to just kind of take the conversation elsewhere because they were onto him and they were about to start grilling him. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just so uncomfortable to watch, like, first with Davis in episode 3 and now this one. But then there's also, like, this is followed by another, like, weirdly humorous scene where Nathan and Kenzie are sort of in... They're in. I don't think it's an archive room. I think they're just trying to investigate that computer that Griffin was using. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know.
I wasn't very clear on where they were.
It's a dark room, and they're floating, and they're like, "Ow, my eye!" Like, "Oh, that was my ear!" Like,
well, so the lights are on, and then they hear someone coming. So Kenzie kills the lights, and Nathan's like, "Wow, good move." And Kenzie's like, "Can you let go of my leg?" And he's like, "I'm not holding on to your leg."
And they leave Box there, and they forget about him, and Box is like, Nathan, I'm still here. And, like, a very humorous, like, tone. I don't know, it's so odd and so tonally, like, different from the rest of the episode, I guess you could say.
Graham Harper. Meanwhile, back on Moonbase, Kravchenko is being a real thorn in Davis' side.
Yeah, Kravchenko is getting really impatient because he wants to meet Nathan. And Davis is, I guess, just trying to do some other work.
Davis is actually trying to do his job for once. And Kravchenko's like, huh? Where's Nathan? Huh? Come on, where's Nathan? What's going on with the investigation? Can you tell me? Can you show me? What's going on? Hey, Davis, hey. Davis is like, oh my God.
This is, I think, when Davis reminds him that he's not even supposed to be here, and he's supposed to be, like, in the other parts of the moon base. But meanwhile, Theroux on Earth is investigating the house that Dilly Goodman made the call from. Mm-hmm. And we see a suspicious figure sneaking up on him. We don't know who this is yet, but we do in a minute. Because the very next scene is Pete, the second in command to Griffin, like unveiling himself in this trench coat. And he's like, yeah, got him, boss. Like, we're good.
And then it was like, what? You're supposed to get Dilly.
Well, Griffin, like, totally explains his evil plan. Like, he's like, Pete, You're not going to believe this, but I think...
Pete, you're not going to believe this.
But I think Nathan Spring figured out that we've been paying off Hubble. Like, why would you say this on like a probably recorded call?
He's like, Pete, I think Kenzie's onto us. I've been trying to hit on her to take her suspicions off of me, but it's not working, Pete. Pete, we're going down for this.
I'm not ready for jail, man.
David's just in the other room, like, overhearing the conversation, like, wait, what?
Well, if David wasn't knocked out, I'm sure he would have overheard all of this.
Doesn't matter, because Box overhears it, because in the middle of the phone call, Griffin's like, wait, what is this? He finds Box. He takes it to Nathan. He's like, I think we have to talk. Nathan's like, yeah, I guess. I want my box back.
And this is the scene that really made me go like, really, Nathan? Wow. Because it seems as if Nathan is about to like go along with this cover up as long as Griffin agrees to Star Cops being placed on American bases. Like, it really seems as if he's sincerely going to do this, and it's not just part of this entire ploy.
Yeah, well, as it turns out, Kenzie was recording the whole thing. All of Griffin's plans are on record now, and she's like, I learned from the best. Obviously, brown-nosing up to Nathan again here.
Yeah. Well, let's actually explain sort of what happened. So,
well, before we do that, let's just quickly mention that the Salvage Crew has showed up on the moon now with the Salvage, and this is relevant because these two scenes happen at the same time. And as you learn like what was going on in the moon base, you're like, oh shit, they better not open the Salvage.
Right. So it turns out that Harvey Goodman actually did exist. And apparently, according to Griffin, unbeknownst to everyone else on the moon or on the Ronald Reagan, Goodman was carrying out biological experiments to create a bacteria that can survive in space. And probably, I guess, use that for biological warfare against the Russians. But when he died, they had to cover it up because I guess they thought the Russians and no one else would really believe that they weren't in on this. So they just jettisoned OZM-13.
Also, they sealed it up because they were afraid if the bacteria got out into the rest of the station, it would kill all of them and then just propagate through the vacuum of space and kill everyone.
Yeah, which is a good point because they have, like, on video, Goodman, like, dying after he's exposed to the bacteria.
Yeah, in, like, 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You have to wonder why they didn't, once they jettisoned it, they didn't, like, blow it up with a missile or something.
He said they launched it towards the sun or something. Do you believe...
Oh, that's right, because the Salvage Crew said, like, oh, we're, like, too close to the sun. We, like, shouldn't be salvaging this far away from Earth or whatever.
But we are anyway. But meanwhile, as you learn that the deadly bacteria is still in the pod, like, they're just opening it up on the moon base.
But then Kravchenko just goes, just kidding, guys. We shouldn't open this up. Like, straight, that's pretty much what happens, because we, like, smash cut to the next day, and Kravchenko's like, man, good thing I stopped them from opening that pod. And Nathan's like, I swear to God, he's in on it somehow.
He has to be like, I mean, Nathan and Kenzie like do think that the Russians set all this up, but apparently not. Apparently, it was just journalism at its finest.
Well, Nathan's upset they can't arrest Griffin on like any charges because it's all white collar crime. I don't know. There was like some technicality, so instead they just leak it to Dilly Goodman, and she reveals that in this future, for some reason, you can just legally change your name like as many times as you want. So she changed her name to Dilly Goodman so that she could pretend to be Harvey Goodman's sister. And she's basically going to break the story and ruin Griffin and Pete, I guess.
Yeah, well, she totally did it to like make a point because she's like, in this day and age, you can totally control information and have it be to your own advantage. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of along the lines of what we saw last week. But yeah, they get their comeuppance at the end of the episode. So a question here, do you believe Griffin when he said like we totally didn't know what what's his name was doing the entire time? Yeah,
no.
I don't believe him either.
No. He's just trying to make it. He's trying to remove culpability from himself.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't believe it for a second. He knew. He had to have. Otherwise, why would he be watching the footage? Like, otherwise, how would he know to contain the bacteria before he killed everybody else on the space station?
And like, what did he just like not know what Goodman was doing, or like, did he just not have any clue? Like Goodman was, hey, I'm experimenting in this. I don't know, like experimentation area. I don't really know what OZM-13 was, other than the fact that they can just like remove it from the ship. But like, yeah, he probably knew.
He had to have, right?
But we find out that Star Cops are like moving into the Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, I guess we'll see if that holds up next week, if they're still in that closet on Moonbase. They seem to be moving a lot.
Yeah. Again, I guess just to reiterate, I thought the crime in this was just more boring, which is why I found the episode more boring than episodes 1, 2, and 3.
I mean, I think so too, and just like less fleshed out. I mean, look how just compare how quickly we summarized that whole plot, and I feel like we didn't skip over any major plot points. Like, I feel like we hit everything in the episode.
No,
and I have a pretty substantial outline for this. Like, and we hit everything on my outline. It's 25 items long.
Yeah, weirdly, I'll say something I kind of wanted to touch on here is that last episode's sort of plot, or like plot is in like the sinister sense of like this is a crime, this is an evil plot, got sort of sci-fi. Like it was the first Star Cops episode to take a more sci-fi route than like maybe episodes 1 and 2 really did. And this episode kind of returns to like a grounded crime in space rather than like a near future sci-fi thing. And I was expecting, like, once episode 3 hit, I was expecting there would be some sci-fi like aspect to the crime in all these episodes, but apparently not. And I'm enjoying that, I guess. I liked how the elements that we'd seen, being built up come back to like inform the main plot of this episode, I guess.
I mean, I like seeing the show evolve and tackle these things in different ways, I guess. My thing is, like I said, the problem with doing a police procedural is that the quality of your episodes are going to be heavily dependent on how interesting the crime you come up for that week is.
Yeah.
And this, I just feel like, the crime was like, not only did I feel like it maybe wasn't as interesting as the past 3 weeks, it didn't feel like as major of a part of this episode as it has for the past 3 weeks. Like, Nathan goes to the Ronald Reagan not to investigate the crime, but to take a tour to see if he can put Star Cops in there, right?
Sure.
Yeah. The Salvage Crew, like, it's not immediately obvious how that's going to tie in. And you don't, there's Harvey Goodman things going on in the background, but, like, you're not really sure if there's any crime here, if just maybe Harvey Goodman, like, just went missing.
Yeah, I think, like, towards the end of the episode, like, probably, I guess you could say in the last 5 minutes, you're like, oh, shoot, like, now the crime is really starting to materialize. But before that, it was just, like, the main draw, I think, was just, like, this suspicious atmosphere around people like Griffin and Goodman's disappearance. And there was no, like, because the other episodes, like, pretty early on in the episode established, hey, there's a concrete, like, crime here and there's a criminal out there and they need to catch them and solve this.
Right.
Star Cops are also, they've always been this way, in episodes 1, 2, and 3, but in this one, they're definitely just pawns in the game of, like, other people.
Yeah.
And they're more, like, bumbling idiots in a way. Which is, like, I kind of like that. Like, hey, Star Cops is just, like, way in over their heads in all this. And I keep forgetting to mention this, but in episode 2, in Nathan's house, we see a chessboard and both of the sides are black. I guess just because one of the, I think, things that kind of comes up again and again in this show is that, like, either, you're just a pawn in this sort of game, the games of others, or, like, both sides are playing themselves or whatever type thing.
Right. Hubble was the most pawnish of all of them.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, but I actually don't really have like a lot more to talk about for this episode plot-wise or anything.
No, again, I feel like I'm mentioning this every episode, but I just want to reinforce that the music is still great. I think it's still like is very fitting for the scenes and like really, because I think the sort of atmosphere of suspicion that I mentioned earlier is definitely, like, if it wasn't for the music, I think this episode would be even more sort of just dull to me than it otherwise was.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't have much to comment on the music.
Well, do you have any quotes?
I do. I've actually got a couple of Britain's 10 actors too. So,
Yeah.
so for quotes, I've only got one quote actually. I thought it was pretty funny. Nathan says something about like the Americans are like they can't decide if I'm the Antichrist or just anti-American, and then Griffin goes, "They're the same thing."
Yeah. There's a lot of like anti-American or like anti-American nationalism stuff in this episode because my only quote was about that too. So Griffin goes, "Your second in command is a little short on patriotism," and Nathan says, "I knew there was something about that fellow that I liked." Yeah.
Well, I guess that kind of ties into the whole thing. The Star Cops are supposed to be like a unilateral, non-government organization, right? Like they're not supposed to be allied with any of the governments, and that's actually why, like in the first episode, the commander asks Nathan, like, "Who's, you need to know who your allies are," and Nathan's like, "They're all the same, though. Like, do I actually need to?" And the guy's like, "Yes, Star Cops commander needs to." But that's actually why I think Nathan is the best possible choice for this position because he realizes that like the Star Cops are supposed to be a neutral agency that polices everyone and isn't supposed to have an allegiance to one side or the other.
Right.
Yeah, so how many of Britain's 10 actors are in this?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of notable ones playing like sort of the more minor characters in this.
Yeah, so I looked up the guy who plays Harvey Goodman was in Mission Impossible and Delta and the Bannerman. And an episode of Doctor Who that's in the next season we haven't watched yet.
Yeah, he was in Rosa for Doctor Who.
And he was also in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So he's actually... This was like the first thing he acted in. It was like one of the first things. And then like a couple years later, or 2 years later, I think, Roger Rabbit was 89 or 88. He was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And
well, he was in also... Did you mention Delta and the Bannerman?
yes.
Yeah, he was in that. He was Hawk, the CIA agent from Delta and the Bannerman.
And then also Jonathan Adams plays Alexander Kravchenko. He was in Zed Cars, Coronation Street, and the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, he's in a lot of British shows.
I just mentioned the ones that I recognize, which are Zed Cars and Coronation Street.
Yeah, Daniel Benzali, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, is Commander Griffin. He's actually been in a lot of shows, a lot of American shows. He was in X-Files, Star Trek, Law & Order. He has a pretty huge career. The guy who plays Pete Lennox, the second in command guy, this is Robert Jezik. He's still acting. He actually played a role in Battlefield on Doctor Who.
What?
Yeah, he was... I don't even remember this character, but he was Zbrigniew. He was one of the... He was a unit soldier who worked under Bambera in Battlefield.
Bambera.
And
other Brig.
Yeah, I looked up a couple of the other actors too, like Marlena Mackey played Dilly Goodman. Russell Wooten played Yeah, there was these people didn't have much, if anything, at all that I recognized. I mean, obviously they had other roles. I just didn't recognize them, and they weren't big, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting how many what's the word I'm looking for? Connections are to other British shows.
Yeah. Especially Doctor Who. I mean, with such a long-running show, I think that's the one that like I'm most interested in because it's like the only show that I've watched that these other people would be in. But yeah, I mean, there's also some more movie references in this one. Like you mentioned, there's the Gone with the Wind thing, and someone mentions John Wayne. It's not a John Wayne quote, but it's someone just mentions.
Someone calls like Nathan John Wayne, I think.
Yeah,
I think it's David. Yeah, and then David has the Gone with the Wind quote.
Yeah. But that's all I had for this one.
That's all I had. So I guess we have one email to respond to, which we'll respond to.
Heck yeah.
It's pretty short. Subject line Inevitable. Hi there. It's exciting to hear about your Inevitable podcast, especially because I've just finished listening to Zenith. In fact, I started listening just after you guys had finished recording it, so I've never got to correspond with you. Thanks for doing Zenith. It was great. Weirdly, I've been a Blake 7 fan since the 1990s, and for some reason I didn't get bored of people talking about it. I don't get bored of people talking about it, sorry. Now you're doing Star Cops. I have watched it, but many, many years ago. I remember not really liking it, but I will try to watch along with you and perhaps write with angry rants and probably not love letters. Anyway, the main reason for writing was to get you to do Sapphire and Steel earlier. The majority of the stories are good or interestingly weird, and if you like literature or philosophy, they are more thought-provoking than Blake 7 or indeed most other TV shows. Can it not be the second season? Again, thanks for all your podcasts. Looking forward to Inevitable CEW. I think the reason why we put these episodes in this order, just as a behind the scenes thing, is that we just kind of we put them kind of in the order that people requested them for the first two. So Star Cops and then Children of the Stone.
Yeah. And we wanted to also get two pretty quick seasons off right off the bat. So, Star Cops, Children of the Stones are pretty short shows. So I think, in response to your question, can it not be season 2? I think we're pretty locked into Children of the Stones for season 2. Season 3, I know we've said will be UFO, but I think that one is still somewhat up in the air. Or we have time to change our minds on that one, I think.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to moving it to be season 3, although that's something that we can talk about when we get there. Because I think we have UFO as season 3 right now, and then Sci-Fi and Steel season 4.
Yeah, something like that. Some vague plan like that.
It's going to depend on Triple Play, I think.
Yeah. And, then we also have Star Maidens, which Navajo Birdsong
that's
on
right.
Twitter
Someone recommended
requested.
Star Maidens, so that's on the list as well now.
Yeah. And then we have a bunch of other just shows in mind, I guess, that no one has recommended, but that we just know of.
Yeah. Like Z-Cars.
It's not really sci-fi. I guess we could do it and make some vague connections.
Is The Prisoner on our list?
It probably should be. I know I said, when I first watched The Prisoner, I was like, I'll never do a podcast about this, but it should just be on the list.
Should be on the list. Firefly should probably be on the list as well.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, well, thank you for communicating with us, Curtis. It's I'm glad you enjoyed Zenith. I know we had a lot of fun making it.
Yeah.
We met a lot of cool people doing it as well.
Yeah.
And we're really looking forward to I guess, trying to continue that with Inevitable.
Yeah, and trying to continue the trend of a lot of people emailing us and having a more interactive discussion on the show.
Right, because we love it. We love talking to fans. I think it gets very kind of stale listening to the same opinions from us every week, and that's why I'm going to speak for myself. I enjoy when people reach out because I like hearing everybody's different opinions and talking about it.
Yeah, definitely.
And on that note, if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry events, love letters, your thoughts on trivial games and paranoid pursuits. Was that it?
Yeah, I believe.
You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify at Inevitable, Classic Sci-Fi Podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching This Case to Be Opened in a Million Years. But until then, the end.